And he would always kind of scratch out these numbers. So he kind of planned, he kind of understood things way better than I did about money and how money works and how to do this. So I remember this like it was yesterday, and this would have been in the mid 80s when he said this, maybe even early 80s. But he says, it looks like to me, he says, not this year, but probably beginning next year, he says, we'll never make less than $30,000.
Wow.
And I go, each? He goes, yeah. And I go, in 1 year?
Imagine you meet someone who's been in business for 40 years, only has a high school degree. How did they become so successful? Dennis Humphrey tells us how today. This is the Voices on the Wind podcast, and I'm Toby Lyles, and my esteemed son,
Maverick Lyles.
And we're welcoming you in today. Like we said, we had Dennis Humphrey of Capital Roofing on, and a really good interview.
Yeah, we also have our newsletter where we kind of just share our thoughts on the podcast episodes, as well as some really fun stories. So if you have not checked that out, that's votw.substack.com. As well, we just want to hear from you guys. So if you have any thoughts, any people you want on, please let us know. And we really want to hear from you guys. So if you have any suggestions, any thoughts, anyone you want on, then we really want to hear from you guys. So if you then just reach out to us on any of our social media platforms, and we gladly hear. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and here we go with Dennis Humphrey.
I mean, my whole, story is I played Little League ball from when I was 8 till I was 12, and between when I would have went from Little League to Babe Ruth baseball, I saw a little classified ad in the Cheyenne paper that said, pony riding and yearling Brahma bull riding, Cheyenne Sheriff's Posse. And it was just kind of after this baseball season had ended, but so the following season I would have went to Babe Ruth, and I thought, well, that was kind of interesting, and asked my mom and dad about it, and they says, oh, okay. So I went to the rodeo at Sheriff's Posse that night, and they had steer riding, not yearling Brahma bull riding, which was fine, but I fell off my steer, fell off my pony, and so 2 weeks later they had another one just like it, and I fell off my steer and won first in the pony riding, and then I never picked up another ball glove for 20 plus years probably. I got hooked on the rodeo bug and met a friend of mine who's still a good friend of mine to this day. I was going into 7th grade, and his mom and stepdad were kind of leaders of the Cheyenne Little Britches Rodeo, and he got me going in Little Britches Rodeo, and so I rodeoed through school and high school rodeo and got my pro card when I was a senior in high school, and had my pro card in the PRCA from 1979 to 92, and did pretty well. I'd say I was better than average, never great, but I rodeoed much through the 1980s, and my partner Craig, he kind of largely held the business together when I was, rodeo. When I was home, I would work, and we'd bring some cowboys home, and we'd roof some houses. They'd stay with me for a couple of days. We'd roof a house or two and get some money and go ride some more bulls and bucking horses. And the sad reality is either don't have the guts or the lack of brains to maybe do it too. So I'm not overly bright, but I'm also I'm pretty persistent, and so but I think the bull riding thing kind of just made me tough and resilient to a degree. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't, sometimes you get hurt, most of the times you don't, and it's a dangerous game. Roofing is a dangerous occupation, and all these years later, I'm 64 years of age now, and I still climb roofs and walk roofs, and then we're right in the middle of this hailstorm or after hailstorm chaos. So I think maybe it has something to do with my adrenaline junkie nature, from riding bulls. And so we just kept doing it. It's kind of like the instructions on a shampoo bottle. It says apply, lather, rinse, repeat. So that's kind of what we did with the roofing gig. We would roof some houses and get some money and go spend it rodeoing and riding bulls and come back and we'd do it again. And so the rodeo gig was good for me, and I qualified for the National Finals Rodeo in 1986 and rode there as the top 15 in the world. Wow. And did decent, but never was a superstar by any stretch of the imagination. But the rodeo gig was pretty good, and quit riding bulls in 1992. My wife was pregnant with our first child, and we thought that was a good time to maybe be done, and the roofing business was starting to take a little bit more life, and I didn't like being gone as much, being married as I used to, just traveling all the time, and so it was a good time to be done with the rodeo gig. So
okay, so you're you're a cowboy and you're just getting roofing gigs. Did they come easy? I mean, you just knock on a door?
Well, some of them were from just some personal referrals, and a lot of people, say, "Oh, here these, Craig and Dennis, they work hard." And our battle cry at that time was, and I hate this mentality now as a more mature businessman and a business guy that's learned this overhead and infrastructure business costs. But back in the day, the battle cry was, "Whatever they'll do it for, we'll do it cheaper." and I hate that now, because it seems like you have the sometimes the proverbial let's go race to the bottom.
Oh yeah.
After 40 years of being in business, I'm convinced, and I think our stats will show this, that probably upwards of 70+% of the business that Capital Roofing does is either from repeat customers and or referrals of repeat customers, and that's a good spot to be. And why I like it is that kind of business referral holds you to a little bit higher standard, in my opinion, because they'll walk in and they trust you first. It's like, I heard really good about you guys. I'd like to do business with you. So we're right now, 2.5 months after a pretty major hailstorm. And we've had a drought for the last 3.5 years with no hail here in Cheyenne, after about 4 or 5 years in a row of a hailstorm. And it's heartwarming and humbling to me that we have a significant number of our community that will walk in here to Capital Roofing and they say, "I've worked with you guys in the past. I'd like to work with you again. Here's my insurance adjuster's scope. I know I got to pay my deductible. Put me on your list, and we'd like to have you come do our work." And so when people come in there and trust you first like that, those are the ones you for sure want to take extra care. Don't take advantage of anybody.
Yeah.
And I am 100% convinced that if you do the right thing long enough consistently, success will find you. I believe that money and wealth is a byproduct of the service first. And much like you don't get much traction if you go to a wood stove and say, "Hey, wood stove, give me the heat, and then I'll put the wood in." We know you got to put the wood in. And we at Capital Roofing believe that we spent a lot of years putting the wood in, and the Lord has blessed us mightily through the years, and we're able to be generous. God's been generous to us. We're generous to the community, and we are pretty good community supporters. We support from kids sports to 4-H to FFA to all kinds of stuff. And we have kind of a running joke around here is just say, "Hey, you know how to get money out of Capital Roofing? Show up and ask."
So out front you've got just a pile of posters and placards and thank yous and from the community. Okay, so you're doing roofs for cheaper than anybody else will with your cowboy buddies.
Back in the day.
And it just sounds like it's just friends who just needed a roof.
Yeah.
Why did you guys even start in roofs? Like, why didn't you do something else, or?
Actually, so as a longtime friend of mine, he was actually 5 years older than me. I met him when I was about mid-teens, probably. His name's Craig Bohealer. And it was over Christmas break in 1978. I was a senior in high school, and he was roofing an apartment complex in Laramie, and he just asked me to come help him over break.
Okay.
And so I went over there, and we're working in the cold, tearing off and replacing the shake roof on an apartment complex in Laramie. And later that same week, over the same break, at a family function just a few blocks down the road, as a matter of fact, that at a family gathering, the fellow that would have been, I guess, my cousin-in-law at the time was married to my cousin, and he and his dad owned a little tiny roofing company called George's Roofing. And he mentioned that my mom had said that I'd been doing a little bit of roofing work over break and wondered if I was looking for a job. And so after a Christmas break of that, so it would have been about the 1st of January of 1979, I started working for George's Roofing in the afternoon. I'd go to school till noon, and then I'd work in the afternoon for George's Roofing, started for $3 an hour. Nailing on T-lock shingles.
Wow.
And so that just kind of led me to starting to learn a little bit of a skill. And I think my free spirit, if you will, kind of led me to be looking for something more to where I can kind of control my time and to a large degree even my income. And so I was 18 at that point in time, and I learned on a Saturday I worked in the morning for George's Roofing, which became K&W Roofing not long after I started, and I got paid by the hour, and I got paid $3 an hour for new construction, and I got paid $5 an hour if it was like an insurance overlay kind of work. So I worked 5 hours on a Saturday morning doing a T-lock overlay on a garage for my first outfit, and so I made $25.
Yeah.
And that afternoon, I worked for Craig for, I'll never forget his term, he says, $8 every other square. Well, if you know the roofing lingo, you kind of figure this out, but the bottom line was, I'm going to pay you for performance, not for your time. So I worked 5 hours in the morning and made $25. I worked 5 hours that afternoon for him, made $63. So that was on a Saturday. Well, so Monday I let the other employer say, I'm out of here. I'm working somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so I worked for Craig for a little while, and then not long after that, he and I became 50-50 partners for a long time. And
Okay.
I refer to those days as kind of pirate roofing. We didn't have a license. We didn't have insurance. We had nothing, but we just knew where they sold shingles, and we would work hard. And we did good work, and we were honest, and we didn't quit. And so we would maybe have a set of cleaner clothes that we would talk with the customer and sell them a job, and then we'd go change clothes and get some ratty clothes on. We'd go tear the shingles off the house and put some new ones back on and collect the check, and they'd give us a glass of tea and a check and say, boy, it looks really great. We've been in this building here it was 16 years in May when we bought this property over here. Parted ways with Craig, my former partner. He and I parted ways the end of February of 2003. And so I knew nothing about nothing at the time, running a business, but now I'm in charge. Craig handled the business aspect of when we were together. I was kind of the roofing field guy. I'm the bull riding roofer, and he was the business brains of the outfit, and he's a sharp guy. And he and I just had some different interests, and so we kind of parted ways, and it was a pretty amicable, parting at the time, but also, he wanted to do some things different than I did, and so when I first started, quote unquote, running Capital Roofing, I was 42 years old, and I knew nothing about nothing as far as running a business. For the first 5 years of being without Craig, we were in what I refer to as the days of the garage and the pasture.
Okay.
And we're just across town on a residential lot in a 30 by 40 Morton building with a dirt floor.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then, but the Lord blessed us through those 5 years. And for the first time in my life, I kind of had some money in the bank, and we're kind of getting some things figured out. And our phone started ringing here May 1st of 2009. So you learn, that's when I started to really learn about and dislike those, whatever they'll do it for, we'll do it cheaper mentality guys, what we call maybe chuck in a truck. And when you have a business infrastructure and you're going to go be legal and compliant, and the government regulators keep an eye on you, and you need to have insurance, and you got to do this and you got to do that. So it just costs you more to do business. And so through the years, I realized that price your product and service fair, make a reasonable profit, and people will come to your door and do business with you. And after all these years, I remain as convinced as ever that people tend to do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And we have a really good group of people around here at Capital Roofing that they can be known, liked, and trusted. And me being me, that's a good problem to have. But I believe that I mentioned a bit ago, if you do the right thing long enough consistently, good stuff will happen. And if I were to ever say there's a step one, a step two, a step three, how it's worked for me is I'm a hard worker. I do good work. I'm honest, and I didn't quit. And I have a high school education. I went to one semester of college 2 years after I got out of high school, and I didn't have a business plan. We just kept doing it over and over and over. But along that evolution, this makes me laugh. I was sitting there with my partner Craig one time, and he would always kind of scratch out these numbers. So he kind of planned, he kind of understood things way better than I did about money and how money works and how to do this. So I remember this like it was yesterday, and this would have been in the mid 80s when he said this, maybe even early 80s. But he says, it looks like to me, he says, not this year, but probably beginning next year, says, we'll never make less than $30,000.
Wow.
And I go, each? He goes, yeah. And I go, in 1 year? He goes, yeah. I go, you're telling me that we can make $30,000 a piece each doing this? I'm in.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that, just that thought, And so, we just kind of kept built on that. But we would do roofs, and we would do them over. We would do them good, and people would tell others about us. We get some more people to come join the team, so you can do more roofs. Then pretty soon you got more people doing more roofs, but then you need a little bit more people in your office to help with the infrastructure. So I poke fun at myself at this after all these years because I have two skills. I ride bulls and roof houses. And so when you got a guy with those limited skills that's overseeing this business does several $1 million in business revenue every year, and to me that's laughable. They go, Dennis is running that outfit? That's funny to me. And it remains funny to me.
My own journey has been hard to understand money just in general. You talked about, getting paid $3 an hour. I grew up broke. And so as a business owner, there's been some times where we made a few dollars, and they can go 1,000 different places, including generosity. It's 1,000 different people who want it. And that I honestly want to give it to you. The question is, how have you dealt with that just mental process of money, if that's a way to say it?
That's a great question. And this kind of maybe a multi-part answer. I mean, a lot of stuff is just sort of kind of, figured out. And I heard years ago from some numerous friends about this idea of, you start young, okay, put away 10%, pay yourself first, do this, yada, 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 and set aside 10% and continue to go do that. And the idea of money working for you and the money making money, I just didn't get that for a long time, and I figured that you work once, you get paid once, you work once, you get paid once. And through the years, I've learned that you either leverage money or you leverage people, you leverage effort. But any business person knows that part of growing a business is going to be creating some leverage. And so if you get paid off the effort of your own self, you can work yourself to death and get paid pretty well you can be a well-paid worker.
Yeah.
But if you expand that opportunity to other people, that will work. And so you can create a well-paid worker, and then you get a little bit of override on that well-paid worker, and you make a little bit more. So you got all of your own effort and some of the effort of somebody else. Mm-hmm. And then so you get a few more people. Another thing is, even though you go look at the bank account and say, well, we got a bunch of money in the bank. Well, a lot of that money is committed elsewhere. We have payroll every 2 weeks. We have our installers that we pay. We have obviously the building rent. You have the suppliers to pay. You've always got that old government entity that wants money to you got to pay them for the right to exist. So there's just a lot of money or a lot of cost and expense that comes with running a business. But you just, tenacity and hanging in there in regard to just the financial stuff, that sometimes you can eat real well, and sometimes you might have to eat a peanut butter sandwich, But I also know that if you give up and are gone, well, then you're not there when the sun comes back out, and for you to take advantage of the, of the sun. So what's the saying? So you got, chicken one day, feathers the next, maybe, some days you eat steak and some days you eat bologna. And through the years, we've just been able to, kind of hang in there and weather the storms.
That's actually quite a bit of wisdom. It's real tempting when you just see a bunch of money in the bank account to say, let's go have fun.
Yeah, that is true. And so from what I'll call the rodeo mentality, we'll say is, there's been times you ride a bull for 8 seconds and they pay you several $1,000s. Yeah. So now I says, man, this is easy. Why doesn't everybody do this? I think, beer's on me. I'll buy dinner, whatever. So ride a bull, win $5,000, win $10,000 or whatever. So now you get thinking like, I make $10,000 a week riding bulls. I think I'll live like I make $10,000 a week. And now you go 6 weeks and don't ever make the whistle again. And you're saying, it's tougher than I thought. And so, you just got to, again, pay attention. I've slept in my truck a lot when I was young, Rodeo. I lived in a trailer house, for years and kept a roof over my head and and I have a pretty decent place to live. I get to drive a decent car now, work with really good people, and wear reasonably clean clothes most of the time, and life is pretty good. But I also just kind of marvel at God's goodness over time, to where if you just stack one success on another success and just do it over and over again, and success, if you will, in my opinion, is a lot simpler than people make it maybe want to be.
Did you go from garage in the pasture to here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so as a matter of fact, one of the questions here is talking about one of these transitions. We say, well, from the garage in the pasture to the big house.
Okay.
And from rodeo to the rooftop, just some changes, so and it was a whole different mentality when we moved from the little garage in the pasture, where you're across town. There's about three of us that fit in the building, and you're in a 30 by 40 Morton building that we really went whole hog on, and added 15-foot addition to it by that 40-foot building. So we thought this is all we'll ever need, and as luck would kind of actually have it, we were working on a residential lot, and the home business rules are. I just learned about this kind of couldn't have been more than the perfect time, but operating a business out of your home under certain parameters, you can do that, but it kind of has to do with how many people show up for work there, and I learned this also, that unless the neighbors complain.
All right.
But as I learned that running business out of a residential lot, that certain things that you have to do and some certain things that you can't do. So ironically, we actually had this property under contract.
Okay.
When I got notification from the lady at the county that says, hey, the neighbors complained and you got to quit doing what you're doing on that residential lot. And I said, well, funny you said that, because we just have a closing date of this date on this property, so we're on our way out anyway. And so that was just a big leap for us. It was a big difference in understand the cost of doing business. And so when we first moved into this property, we thought, wow, we got a 10,500 square foot building and 2.6 acres. Boy, this is just going to be great. But what I realized was, well, if you fill up that 2.6 acres and your 10,000 foot building just with stuff that doesn't make you money or generate revenue, that's a pretty backwards way to go. And so it was a little bit of an education at the time to start understanding, overhead and balance. And when you grow, you need some more people, but then do you go get the people before you have the growth? Now, if you have the people and you don't have the revenue that comes in, well, then how do you pay the people? Yeah. But then if you have that surge, so you have a lot of business over here and you got a lot to do, but we need more people. Now, where do you find the people? So when I joke about with my limited skills, my talents of being a bull rider and a shingle installer, and I'm trying to figure out overhead and personnel and balancing a budget, and so it's been a fun journey, and I no doubt it's been laughable for many of my friends and colleagues, to watch. To this day, after all these years, and as I mentioned, I'm closer to the exit door than the entrance door here, but to this day, I like the people part of the business. I like the people that I spend my time around, here in the office and around, for the most part. We all have issues where we'll annoy one another. I annoy my teammates, and my teammates annoy me sometimes, but I love them all, and I think for the most part they love me to the right degree, and it's a pretty good fit. And but I like, in general, I like just the Cheyenne community, how they've welcomed us, blessed us, been good to us. I like dealing with them. We have a lot of friends and friendly acquaintances who are realtors and bankers and lawyers and insurance people and just customers that have placed their trust in us for the through the years. I saw a fellow a few nights ago at dinner, and his name is Jackie Smith. And I saw him at dinner the other night, and about, I think 7 or 8 years ago, we just had an issue with his house. We went and tore his roof off and put it back on and just hacked it up. My crew it just did not work. And he was the most kind and gracious guy. The long short, we ended up tearing the roof off and redoing some siding. So we kind of took a bath on it. But for a guy that could have been, angry and belligerent, unforgiving, if you will, but he was more than gracious and let us work through it, and we end up got a great roof on his house, and just saw him again the other night at dinner. But some of these are just some customers are just really special that you hold dear, and some of these people we've done a roof for them 3 or 4 or 5 times throughout the career. So I'll miss that more than anything, but I like the people aspect still to this day, and even as I phase more out of from the rooftops and not as involved in the daily operational decisions, but I'll always be a cheerleader and ambassador for Capital Roofing, and I'm pretty decent at building relationships and offering a hello to someone if I can point people in our direction, and I can confidently say that those folks over there at Capital Roofing will take good care of you for years to come. My kids are a big part of it, and got some other teammates that I've mentioned that are a big part of it, and I just hope they continue to keep the ship going in the right way. And as I mentioned, I think that principles remain the same and processes change. And from my perspective, I think the cowboy ethics on the wall out there, I don't know if you looked at that or not, but the 10 principles to live by. It's out of a book called Cowboy Ethics. Yeah. And that's kind of our version of the 10 Commandments, if you will. But the bottom line is just go do the right thing because it's the right thing. You know what the right thing is. And if you do that on a regular basis, life's going to go pretty good, and people will want to do business with you. And when people want to do business with you and you treat them well, life's going to be all right.
Do the right thing over time.
Yep.
His persevering, just really persevered as a kid, He wasn't just like, oh, I want to go to the rodeo, but like, I don't know how I'm going to do that. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to go do roofs, which is not easy. It's not easy to do roofs. It's very hard, and rodeo is very hard, but he's just like, I'm going to go do it. And I thought that was super cool. Just lots of grit. And then, even when he didn't know what he was doing, he's still pushing through. And now he's got a 40-year-long old business. And that is a success. So I just really enjoyed the story, really enjoy him. It was really cool.
Yeah, work hard, persevere, keep going. And he also ended up pulling people in to help him. Yeah. And that was really meaningful to him. So that is critical. We need good people around us. So, which is why I like having you on this podcast.
Yes.
Isn't that right? So may we all find the people that we need. And until then, my friends, happy sailing.